Hey everyone, welcome to Web Sleuths YouTube Live. My name is Trisha Griffith, and with me, of course, is our trusty, amazing executive producer, insightful one, also known as Stephanie or George or somebody. Just whatever name flies out of my mouth is what I call her. And also joining us is our good friend, Megan Connor. Megan has the amazing YouTube channel, and you've got to go to it, guys. It's called, hold on, I've got it right here, Third Verse, okay? And it is, I'll put the link in chat right now. It's an inspirational, amazing YouTube channel. And Megan, I'm going to put your name up here. I apologize, I meant to do that. Okay. But tell us about the about your YouTube channel. I'm putting the link in now, because right now, as soon as I start to go live, my cat is demanding to come in. So I can hear you guys. So please go ahead. Tell us about Third Verse.
Okay.
Yeah, so I started Third Verse as a place for me to build a community of other people who are healing from trauma and family relationships that are difficult. I started it a couple years ago when I published my book, I Walked Through Fire to Get Here. And now it is the home of my podcast, which launched, I think April 8th. And so I drop my podcast episodes there once a week. And then I do a live premiere of my podcast episode along with an unpack after the episode is over. And that's also where I post my Ask Megan, Ask Me Anything videos with thoughts about the Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow trial.
Now, you are the Cox family's first cousin. And
That's right.
You grew up with them, with Lori and Alex and the gang. Yep. And you have a very unique perspective on this. We know how messed up the Cox family was and is. And we're going to talk a little bit about the inappropriate relationship between Alex and Lori, brother and sister. But you have a YouTube channel based on recovering trauma. Is this something that runs through your family? Is this all part of the Cox or whatever side of the family you come from? Is this a generational big family issue with you all?
Yeah, so I think that trauma gets misunderstood a lot. Mm-hmm. Trauma is really just a wound. And right. I think all of us have wounds. Some of us grew up getting the same wound poked at over and over and over again. And when that happens, you tend to start creating behaviors in your life that protect mm-hmm. you from that wound. Right. And sometimes those behaviors are not healthy. Now, when you come from a long family that has generational trauma in it, you're kind of already born with some wounds. Mm-hmm. And then the wounded people who are raising you give you other wounds.
Oh,
and
dear.
It starts to perpetuate that cycle, right? So I think, again, all of us have some kind of a wound. It's not mm-hmm. our parents' fault or anybody's fault. It just is the human existence is to be wounded. And so the more we're able to examine our behaviors and look at them and see whether we're healthy or not healthy, then mm-hmm. the better off we're going to be. It's those people who ignore their wound or those people who refuse to admit that there is a wound. Those are the people who end up perpetuating
right.
wounded behavior, trauma behavior. And so when I look at our family, I look at the fact that I'm talking about my dad's side of the family now. So this is my dad, who is Janice's sister. Janice is Lori's mom.
Okay.
There are 4 siblings in that family. Janice is the oldest, and then my dad, and then another sibling, and then Uncle Rex, who some of you have seen. Mm-hmm. And he and Adam, I think, have been on your podcast before, right?
Yes.
So
I think.
Yeah. So Adam and Rex of Silver Linings, they host Silver Linings podcast.
Yes.
So in that family, those 4 children grew up with a father who was a prisoner of war in World War II. Mm-hmm. He was an Air Force colonel. He was very strict. And by my father's account, he was not a loving, demonstrative father. And he likely had, from what my dad has told me, my assessment of what my dad has told me is that he likely had some alcoholism and probably some abusive behaviors.
Okay.
Now, in that generation, people did not go to therapy. And
no, they didn't. They shut up. Yeah.
Yes. And the therapy services that were available, the treatments were unreliable. They were often harmful treatments, and the medications were incredibly detrimental as well. And so, what's the likelihood that they're going to get that trauma resolved? Not very likely.
Zero. Right.
And then you add to that, my dad's mom joined the Mormon church when her kids were in their early teens and preteens. And that environment is a very strict environment. And it's an environment in which you're only truly acceptable if you fit into a little box, right?
Right.
And the more your natural behaviors are outside of that box, the less belonging you're going to feel within that community. So you've already got generational trauma, and then you add to that a high demand religion, and you can have some really horrible things come out of that, obviously, as we've seen. I also think, not to get too woo for anybody here, but I know that when I began having children, my oldest daughter, when she was forming in my womb, there were eggs forming inside of her ovaries at the same time.
At the same time,
And,
right.
Yeah. And what we know about trauma now is literally the body keeps the score. Bessel van der Kolk's amazing book about how your cells hold on to emotions if you don't release them and process them. So when I was born, I was already carrying the trauma of my mother's mother.
Right.
When my daughter was born, she was carrying my trauma and my mother's trauma. So necessarily, we're all born with some kinds of wounding. And the difference between healthy and not healthy is, were your parents able to meet your emotional needs? And if they were, you have a greater chance of being emotionally healthy. If they were not, it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with them. It just means they didn't know how. And I always liken this to generational wealth of a monetary kind. If your parents were blue collar workers and their parents were farmers, what's the likelihood that you're going to have the ability to pass on an inheritance to your children?
Right.
Not very likely. And it's the same thing with emotional wealth as well.
That's actually brilliant. That is actually a brilliant, and I can't tell you how in awe I am of what you're saying, because it is so true. Our big thing here is, our motto is, we've got to stop creating the monsters. And that's along the same line. We've got to stop the wounds from opening up on everybody all the time that can create these monsters. Everyone, we have Megan Connor with us. She's the host of Third Verse. You can find the YouTube channel that we'll put the link up in chat. And you're going to see people in chat that are moderators that aren't ours. Our chats have merged, which is cool. I think that's so wonderful. And you may see some donations and things. Those are for Megan's channel. We don't have donations here on this channel, but I encourage you, please donate and become a member of Megan Connor's Third Verse. It is well worth it. And the fact that you're doing this, Megan, to help others and being so open and honest about your trauma and how you can help people. People just need to accept the fact that don't suck it up. Okay. You have to suck it up to some extent. Let me phrase that differently. But I mean, it's okay to feel sad and to cry and to talk to somebody about it. My mom grew up during the Blitzkrieg of London, grew up in with the bombing from the Germans, and you just didn't cry. You just didn't do anything. I remember when my dog died, first person close to me that ever died. I was 14 and he was 14, and he died. And of course I was inconsolable. And then the next day at dinner, I excused myself and went up my bedroom and started crying. And my mother came up and she was so mad at me. She's like, knock it off. Stop it, Patricia. Just stop it. Stop it. This is ridiculous. And I'm like, oh my God. And I knew then never to show them emotion ever again, my family,
Yeah.
you know, but that's how she was brought up, you know, you just,
Exactly.
you hide it. And as you said, the body will respond to it. It's like a balloon with air. And if you sit here and you push it, and a little bit goes this way, a little bit goes that way, the more you push it and the more you squeeze it, eventually it's going to pop somewhere. You might be an alcoholic. You might be addicted to gambling. You might be addicted to drugs. You might abuse yourself. A million different things. So again, I'm getting off on a tangent here, and I do apologize. But Megan, again, thank you for being so open and honest. How has your family reacted to this?
Of course, everyone in different ways, in their own ways. You said something when you were describing that the way your mother reacted. People who have not dealt with their own emotions get very uncomfortable when other people express
Yep.
emotion.
Mhm.
Exactly.
And that's a
Yep.
lot of the reason why we as children get silenced, because our parents haven't dealt with their own emotions yet.
Exactly.
And what we want to do is deal with our own emotions so that we make it safe for our children to express their emotions too. And so in answering the question of how's my family dealing with it, well, those of us who have processed through our trauma and our grief and our emotions and are allowing ourselves to express our emotions freely are doing well.
Good.
And those of us who are in denial
Mhm.
about either the dysfunction or the effect this has had on ourselves or our family members are not doing well,
Right.
and will continue to not do well. And I think that's the hard part, because obviously I said this on my channel a little bit earlier. It's hard for us to admit our own faults and be introspective about our own behaviors. Imagine how difficult it is to have someone calling out your behaviors in a pretty public place, which is why I'm not really popular with a lot of my family members. But I always do it with the caveat of saying I try really hard to be very truthful and to be accurate.
Mhm.
And if I make a mistake or say something that is incorrect, I want to be corrected, and I welcome that criticism. And in addition, I'm not saying anything about my family members that I wouldn't be happy with them to share about me. If they
Mhm.
want to share something truthful about me that is contributing to harm of children or harm of anyone, I want to be called out for that, because I want to be aware of it too.
Exactly.
So I'm in a space where I'm telling uncomfortable truths. That's going to be uncomfortable for anybody who is complicit or who hasn't examined their own role in
Mhm.
this. And I know that's hard for a lot of my family members. It's also hard for me because it isolates me. And there are plenty of people who don't talk to me or won't talk to me, either
Ma-
because of something
oh,
that
I'm
I've
sorry. Go
said
ahead.
or something that I might say. So,
Well, and let me ask you, because I'm nosy and I want to get really personal here because that's my job. So, I mean, do you sit down like with your family members and say, okay, let's talk about what happened? A, B, C, D. And I will admit to A, B, C, D. And they just are like, I don't want to hear about it. Don't want to hear about it. The book is called, what is the name of your book?
it's called I Walked Through Fire to Get Here.
I'm going to put it in chat right now.
Thank
We'll
you.
put the link up. So anyway,
Yeah.
so go right ahead. I'm sorry, Megan.
No, that's okay. I will say that sounds like a really healthy way to handle things. That's not
Mhm.
how things have historically been handled in my family. And I will say, when I have something that I disagree with a family member, I do my very best to go directly to that family member and
Mhm.
speak to them directly, because I don't really believe that it's anybody else's business. And I want to address things in a direct way, because that's historically not how things have been done in our family. The
Right.
way that our family has usually handled things is, if I have a problem, let's just say, for example, I'm an unhealthy family member and I have a problem with my sister, I go to my brother and I vent to him about my sister. And then
Mhm.
eventually my brother might talk to my sister and tell my sister the problem that I had, but there's no direct communication between the two parties that have a conflict. And that's
right.
number one, an unhealthy way to handle things. And number two, it doesn't really solve any problems. My partner had this really excellent analogy for his kids in a similar situation. He said, when somebody activates you or upsets you, it's sort of like you're pulling back the string on a bow and arrow. And if you don't relieve that tension by talking directly to the person, it gets tighter and tighter and tighter until you don't have any control over where it goes. And all of a sudden, it just shoots off. And somebody's going to get hit with that arrow, not the person that hurt you, probably.
That's a very good way to look at it. So I can understand why. I'm sure there's some family members that absolutely adore you and welcome you and are so grateful to you. Sure. And then there's other, like thinking about what you described just now and doing it with my family scares me to death. My parents have both passed. And the thought of me sitting down and saying, okay, we need to talk about what happened here and why this traumatized my brother and I so much, they would explode. My God, we gave you what are you talking about? We gave you everything. We're not perfect. You know, I could never, ever in a million years. And I had a therapist once tell me when I was 20 that if I didn't take care of, my trauma, that when I hit 40, something was going to happen. And he was right. And so I always tell everybody, for God's sakes, take care of that trauma. It's going to come out somehow, some way. A tumor, cancer, and like I said, addictions, So do you, is this like your job, or do you have like another life, or how, let me get really personal. I won't ask you how much you make or, what your blood type is or anything, but tell us a little bit more about your life, please.
Well, I went to school to study music. I grew up singing and playing the piano, and my undergraduate degree is in music and marketing. I've always kind of had like an entrepreneurial spirit, so I can't really imagine. I don't really remember a time in my life from seventh grade on that I didn't have some kind of side hustle or something that I was doing on the side to make money. This is really not that. This is kind of an expensive hobby right now.
I can imagine.
Which I wrote my book as a labor of love. I wanted to put it out there for trauma survivors. I didn't ever expect it to make money. I've given away more copies than I've sold. And my podcast is sort of the same way right now. Self-publishing is expensive, and self-publishing a podcast is expensive too. So I do have another job. I sort of got off on a tangent there. But I was talking about the marketing part of my degree, which is what sort of fostered that in me. After that, I stayed home with my kids, just stayed home with them for about 3 years while my spouse at the time got his business up and running. And then I went and got my master's degree in vocal performance. And so throughout that time and right after my master's, I was teaching voice lessons as a means of income. And then I became a high school choir teacher. And I did that for about 10 years. So altogether for 15 years, I was singing, teaching voice lessons, and I was a choir teacher. And then when the pandemic hit, it's kind of hard to get together in a group and sing when you're social distancing and isolating. And I found it pretty miserable. And add to that all of the social pressures of being a teacher and my kids making sacrifices because I wasn't making enough money. By this time I was divorced, and it was hard for our family for a long time financially. So I got out of teaching, and I went to work for the parent of one of my former students. He has a property tax assessment firm here in San Antonio. And I did that with him for a little while. And then he sort of like is a serial entrepreneur, and he had branched out into trying to sell fuel to Mexico, exporting fuel to Mexico. And so my current job is in operations for a fuel supply company, and our primary focus is export to Mexico.
Okay. So in other words, you're like one of those smart people that I just go, huh? How did you do that? What? So you are an amazing woman. Everybody, we're talking with Megan Connor, host of the YouTube channel, Third Verse. And I want to tell everybody, your YouTube channel gets 25,000, 30,000 views. everybody, please go subscribe to Megan's channel. We got to get your subscribers up. I mean, people come and watch it and then they don't hit the subscribe button. Come on. I want you all to smash that subscribe button for Megan, please. For me. Okay.
Thank
Megan,
you. I appreciate it.
And I'm going to buy the book too. I think everybody should buy it because and everybody's trauma is different. You know, a really wealthy person, you look at them and you think, how could they have any problems? Well, their problems are just as traumatic to them as ours are. Granted, I think it's easier if you don't have to worry about bills, but that's just me. So anyway, let's talk about your cousins, the Cox family. Now, this is your father's sister, did you say?
Yes.
Okay. So you're very familiar with this generational family. And what was her maiden name? Your father's last name?
Connor.
Connor. Okay, it is Connor. Okay.
Yeah.
So the Connors. What was the household? You touched on it a little bit, but what was the household like for the Connors growing up? And then we're going to be able to touch a little bit more on Lori and Alex.
Yeah, so they moved all over the place with my grandfather being in the Air Force. He was a colonel in the Air Force. So they spent some time in England, spent some time in Japan. My dad always told everybody he was from Texas, but as a child, he only lived here, I think, for 4 years. And so my grandpa Press was the Air Force colonel, very strict. He had very strict rules about how his household was to be run. As an officer in the Air Force, you sort of have to set an example for the enlisted people. And as the wife of an officer, there's a lot of pressure to behave a certain way and to dress a certain way and to have lots of social interactions in a very specific way. And so I'm sure that my grandma Noni was, she was subjected to that conformity, so she died when I was about 6 months old and I never knew her. But the stories that I hear about her are very much that she was very smart and had a very sharp sense of humor. But also imagining, growing up with that husband and the expectations of women at that time were to be very submissive to their husbands.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm sure that probably felt stifling to her. So a couple of funny family stories. One is that my grandfather had a very specific requirement of how the children were to answer the phone. If anyone ever called the colonel's residence, it was to be Colonel Connor's residence. How may I help you? And one time this is the family story. And I will preface this by saying, it's very common for family stories to have an element of truth, but to not be completely true. So I just want to put that out there, right? But the family story goes that one time when Colonel Connor was deployed in Japan, he called home to the United States to speak to his family. And my father answered the phone. And rather than answering in the prescribed way, he answered, I think he said, Connor's mortuary, you kill him, we chill him, you slice him, we dice him. And apparently the family story is that Colonel Connor boarded a plane that day, came home, and gave my father a beating.
Oh my God. Oh no.
I don't think that's exactly how it happened, but I'm sure there were repercussions from my dad for expressing his sense of humor in that way. That was, I'm sure, felt embarrassing to my grandfather, but that was sort of the family thing that continues today, is that image is everything. What we put out there in front of people is more important than what's going on inside the house. We want people to perceive us in a certain way,
Exactly. And Megan, a great example of that is the Cox family, your cousins. Janice, that's Lori's mother, I believe.
Yeah.
She's all about, look at me, I'm sunshine, I'm beautiful, we have this beautiful family, we're perfect. But they were anything but perfect. And one thing that I think is shocking and appalling, but it actually explains a lot, is there was, some people say, an inappropriate relationship between Alex and Lori. Now, you spent time with them as kids. Did you ever see anything like this between them?
Yeah, so I think I've said on some of my interviews in other places that the Cox kids were accustomed to just being very touchy-feely in general with each other.
Mm-hmm.
But, I remember times when, Summer would grab Adam's pecs and squeeze his pecs and, talk about how strong he was. I didn't think that was normal behavior at the
Mm-hmm.
time, and now I don't think that's normal behavior either. I would never do that to one of my brothers,
No.
and, my kids have never done anything like that. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's normal for siblings to touch each other's bodies, squeeze each other's bodies, comment on each other's bodies, but that went on in the Cox household all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And you can hear a lot of times, other family members who do speak publicly who say things like, I didn't notice anything inappropriate growing up. I didn't think there was anything wrong with that. You have to consider their perspective. When you grow up in a household like that and you've never examined whether it's healthy or not, you do think that's normal and you
Right.
don't see anything wrong with it. They don't realize that other families don't behave that way.
Exactly. Yeah. And there, I've mentioned this before. I spoke to Alex Cox's first wife, ex-wife, and she told me some just appalling stories. And one of the reasons she quit being friends with Alex, they were great friends after they divorced, was because of the relationship between Alex and Lori. She said it was so inappropriate.
Yeah.
She'd be driving and she'd look, and Lori would be in Alex's lap with her arms around his neck, just snuggling like this with him. And she said it was so inappropriate that she said, I can't be with you anymore, Alex, because it's way too uncomfortable. Yeah. And it's interesting. She couldn't get the detectives to call her back on this case. She kept trying to tell. She finally did get in touch with them. But again, it explains a lot about Lori. But let's talk about the other kids in the family. Lori is obviously delusional. I don't know if she has I have no idea how to diagnose her. Does she have a personality disorder? Does she have some sort of schizoid personality disorder? What are the other kids like? I mean, there's Adam, and he seems pretty darn normal. Does he do the show with your uncle? Or is that your father?
No, that's Rex is my uncle.
Okay, so yeah. They do, and they're great. He's great. And how did he turn out okay? I guess is the question.
Yeah, I mean, different people are going to handle different traumatic experiences in different ways. So as far as, how did he turn out, quote unquote, normal? I think that there's still some part of Adam. I believe, this is my opinion about Adam. I'm not saying it's gospel truth or anything. And right. He and I haven't spoken necessarily about this particular topic in detail, but I think there is a part of him that is still in denial and that is still dissociating. He does keep things very much at arm's length, and he and Rex, even though they do talk about the case on their podcast, I get the sense personally that it's pretty surface level. Mm-hmm. And that there's not a lot of digging into the why and the how this happened, because that would require digging into possible personality issues, possible family dysfunction, and all of those kinds of things, which is really hard to do. So while I think Adam is a lot more normal than any of the other, obviously the other Cox family, mm-hmm. I don't think you come out of that family environment without some kind of wounding.
Absolutely. And again, it's his personal journey if he ever wants to explore that, and then share it with us. Absolutely. Yeah. Quick story about Adam, and I know this because I was a rock jock for a zillion years in Salt Lake, and this is a famous story. Adam was part of a morning show, and you know this, and they had a contest called A Wii for a Wii. You remember the Wii, W-I-I, and they were really expensive and big. Well, they had a contest to see who could drink. He worked for a radio station, a morning show. And it wasn't his idea. It was a promotions department idea. They had an idea to drink water, and who could ever hold their Wii for the longest would win a Wii. Well, this woman held it so long, her kidneys shut down and she died. And he got fired, which I have always thought that was so unfair. It wasn't his fault. That whole morning show, they came to them and said, this is what you're doing. Now, why nobody thought wow, that might not be a good idea health-wise. So I've always had like this, like a little special place in my heart, because I'm like, this poor guy was just doing his career, and then this horrible thing happens, and he gets blamed for it. So anyway,
I
today,
always thought that was very much about optics for the radio station
oh, it
itself,
was, yes,
more than it was culpability on Adam's part. And also it was, it's the kind of thing where you really need to have somebody on your team, on your staff, who thinks these things through to logical conclusions, and who thinks about the potential liabilities of something like that. Could someone get hurt? And, your regular garden variety people, none of us think that water could potentially be toxic, but it's like anything else. If you have too much of it, it's called hyperhidrosis. If you drink a lot and don't ever pee, then your kidneys are going to shut down. But I guess they didn't have somebody on their team, somebody from legal, who is, thinking through these things or whatever. So they fired the entire staff that was in charge of that.
And that, again, that was for optics, so they could say, look what we did. We handled it.
Yeah.
And they didn't, I don't know if they even fired the people that really were the ones responsible, were the upper management people who okayed it.
The decision makers.
Yeah, exactly. Well, today in court, and we're going to be playing this a little bit later on, Zulema was on. Zulema Pastenis. And she was married to Alex. And she talked today in court about how Alex went to Mexico shortly before he died, and he was healthy, fine, everything was great. He came back sicker than a dog, and then died the next day. And he said to her, I wonder if they're going to make me their patsy, I think is what he said.
Their fall guy.
The fall guy. Sorry, their fall guy. And I think Zulema knows a lot more than she's saying, but she has immunity while she testifies. And they, in fact, I'll tell this story now, and I want to get your comment on it. Zulema, in a police interview that wasn't played today, Nate Eaton played it, and it was really interesting. A few years ago, she tells the story about how they got married. They got married so quickly because Lori and Chad wanted them to. So Alex did whatever Lori wanted, and I guess Zulema wanted a husband, so they got married in Vegas. Well, I guess he was a massage therapist, and he said, hey, Zulema, I want to give you a massage. He said, but we need to get something to put on the bed so the oil doesn't get on the bed, because they were in a motel. So Zulema said they went and they got this great big painter's tarp thing. And she thought that was so weird. So she goes on the bed, and he's hardly using any oil. It would be, the way it sounded to me, it would be like a tarp that Dexter would get when he was getting ready to kill somebody. And she said all of a sudden she hears him talking, just mumbling, talking to somebody. And she's thinking, that's just so weird. And she finally said, who are you talking to? And she, I am assuming she's laying down like this because she's on her stomach and he's massaging her. And he goes, nobody. And then he stops. And she wonders if she was getting ready to be killed for whatever reason, and that would make sense that maybe, just maybe, they wanted Zulema out of the picture, and Alex was supposed to do it and he couldn't do it. She's always wondered that.
Yeah.
Does it surprise you that Alex Cox, although never convicted, has obviously murdered people? He's a cousin you grew up with. You knew him.
It doesn't surprise me, unfortunately. There were always kind of, rumors and family stories about, Alex. There's one family story about a family member who decided they didn't want their dogs anymore. And the rumor is that Alex took them out into the desert and just let them go.
No, God.
There were stories like that. And then, of course, he was arrested for the assault on Joe Ryan and served jail time for that. So we knew he was capable of violence. We thought, at least I did anyway, that it was going to be, violence in protection of his sister. If he really did believe that Joe Ryan essayed Lori's kids, then, it was more of a protective instinct or whatever. But I've told the story in other interviews before of Stacy's death, the oldest daughter, and it was me and Alex. We were the only ones there, and at the time, I thought it was odd and very strange, but it was so traumatizing for me that I didn't really put puzzle pieces together until the fall. I think the fall of 2019, when we knew that that Alex had shot Charles. At the time, the family was saying it was self-defense and all of that, but
all that baloney.
I didn't believe that from the very beginning.
Right.
And so then when I think it was after Tammy died and people were putting Tammy and Chad and Lori together, and we were just finally learning that stuff for the first time, that was when it sort of clicked for me. And I was like, I think the children are in danger. I think I'm in danger. I think my daughter who lives in Rexburg is in danger. And I think
Really?
Alex probably killed Stacy as well.
Now, Stacy was the other sister who had diabetes, but she died in a hospital. But there's always been that kind of rumor that he put an end to her quickly because he ended up taking her credit card. Wasn't that it?
Yeah, so the situation was that Adam was in Kansas doing his radio show, but the rest of the family, Janice, Barry, Lori, Summer, and Colby, were all in Hawaii on vacation.
Yeah.
And Alex lived in San Antonio at the time, and he and I would occasionally hang out, although not that often. But he called me kind of out of the blue one night and asked if we could hang out and watch a movie. And I said, sure. And he came over to my apartment. He brought some takeout. We put a movie on. He wasn't really himself, like his normal, gregarious, bubbly, joking self. And he stopped the movie halfway through and he said, hey, I've been really worried about Stacy lately. And I said, well, what's going on? And he said she'd been depressed and that, she had, obviously we knew she had been unhealthy and was having a hard time with her diabetes management. And he said, Stacy told me tonight that she was going to take a big shot and go to bed. And I'm worried about her. So would you go with me to check on her and see if she's okay? And at the time, I didn't know anything about diabetes management or insulin or how that worked. But now I have a son who's got type 1 diabetes. And I know that if you take a big shot of insulin, what it's going to do is lower your blood sugar really low. And it is possible for you to die from that if you take too much insulin. I didn't know that at the time. And so I didn't really know what that meant, but I said, of course, I'll go with you. So Alex and I drove over there to Janice and Barry's house where Stacy was living. And he opened the door and immediately went up the stairs, which I thought was weird because the master bedroom was upstairs, which would have been Janice and Barry's bedroom, but Stacy's bedroom was downstairs. But he, I guess, already knew that she was up there sleeping. So we go up there and he tries to shake her and wake her and she won't wake up. And I try to shake her and wake her and she won't wake up and I'm calling her name. And in the meantime, Alex gets on the phone to call 911 and he leaves the room and I'm there with Stacy.
Oh my God.
And the next thing that I know, Alex comes back into the room and he says the paramedics are on their way. And I asked him kind of what's going on. I didn't really understand what was happening. And he said that he was just worried. He was worried that she took a big shot, something like that. When the paramedics got there, they were in go mode. They immediately brought a stretcher upstairs. One of the paramedics kind of took me aside and another paramedic got next to her on the bed and started thumping her in the sternum really hard. So they already knew that she was non-responsive. And then they immediately, as soon as she didn't respond to that sternum thumping, they started cutting her clothes off and put her on the stretcher and took her away. And I was just dumbfounded because I didn't know. To me, I was like, she's just sleeping. Like I can see her breathing. She's breathing. She's shallow, but she's still breathing. So I think I remember this right, that Alex and I got in his car and followed the ambulance to the hospital. I called my parents once we got there to ask them to meet us there. And we sat there and waited with the doctors. I think my dad called Janice. I don't know for sure. But we sat there and waited. And when the doctor came out, he spoke to my parents, I think, directly. And then my mom came to talk to me and said that Stacy had an unusually high amount of alcohol in her blood, and asked me if Stacy did she drink. She said, my mom said, did she drink? Was she a drinker? Was the question. And I said, I'd never known Stacy to drink at all. And I'd never known there to be alcohol in the Cox's house at all, except for cooking wine,
They're good Mormons, sure.
Yeah. But now thinking back on it, Alex had access to her diabetic supplies, and I think she was self-injecting from a vial, and, it's possible he could have put alcohol in her vial, which would have made her blood sugar go really high. And the diagnosis for Stacy was not low blood sugar. It was diabetic ketoacidosis, DKA, which is high blood sugar for a prolonged time.
Right.
So if it was alcohol in her bloodstream, she could have taken insulin to combat that, and it wouldn't have been enough necessarily to combat that. So immediately when we got to the hospital, they told my parents right away, she's not going to recover, and we're going to move her to hospice care.
Oh, God.
And so I, helped. My parents really made those arrangements. I was there with Stacy for a while. Alex kind of disappeared for a couple of days, and they told me in hospice care that she maybe had 3 or 4 days, which would have been plenty of time for the Coxes to come home from Hawaii.
Sure. Wait, what?
They stayed in Hawaii.
What? God almighty, what is wrong with this family?
When I did see Alex again, I asked Alex, where have you been? And, he's kind of mumbled an excuse about this being really too hard for him, blah, blah, blah. And then he let me know that he had bought some things with Stacy's credit card, which I thought was crazy. I was like, why would you do that? And he said, well, she would probably want me to have some nice things, and I don't think she's
my God.
And she's never going to have to pay it back. There's one family member that accused me of also using the credit cards, which I will tell you unequivocally, I did not benefit in any way from Alex's spending. And I did not use her credit cards at all.
I believe you.
But that's just the kind of person that Alex was. He walked that, gray area sort of line of like, this is probably inappropriate, but I'm going to come out okay, and I don't see anything wrong with it. Like, he didn't have a conscience in that way.
Well, yeah. And what would his motive be, though? Just to do it? Just the power of doing it, or wanting to use her credit card, or what?
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's the power of doing it, but it was like, I don't know. It's not like he was suffering financially and needed help buying food. Like, he went out and bought a set of golf clubs. It was that kind of stuff. And I think it is kind of the, maybe sociopathic behavior of just not having a conscience in that way, or thinking how wrong that would be. Just thinking like, here's a situation where I can take advantage, and then in fact doing it and not really seeing anything wrong with it, or knowing how it might affect other people in some way.
Oh my God, this is just so appalling. And I think absolutely that he and Lori killed Joseph Ryan, Tylee's father. He was fine, he didn't have any problems. And then one day he dies. And too many people drop dead around Lori, Alex, and Chad Daybell for it to be normal. Do you think that's a possibility?
I do think it's a possibility. I know that the police reopened the investigation into Joseph Ryan's death 2 times, and both times they said that there was no foul play. Although I do know that Tylee had access to his apartment. She had a key to his apartment because of visitation. And, you know, we do have that comment from Audrey Baratario when she testified that Lori watched someone take their last breath. People have speculated that that was Joe Ryan.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised by it. Another family member told me that at the scene in his apartment, they found a pair of women's sunglasses. And Joe's sister, Annie Cushing, I believe, commented that that Joe was not dating anyone at that time. So I think it's entirely possible. You know, we also do have accounts of Lori poisoning people, like for example, and when I say poisoning, I just mean giving them things without their knowledge that would affect their mood or behavior or whatever.
Okay.
She would give her kids Benadryl so that they'd fall asleep early. She would put Xanax in Charles's shakes sometimes to chill him out. We have proof of other people relating these facts. So we know that Lori was engaging in those behaviors for a long time. So I think it's very, very possible.
Yeah. And do you think that Alex killed himself or was killed?
Yes to one of those two things. I don't believe in any way that it was natural causes.
No.
There are no coincidences in this family when it comes to death. And to have him die the day after Tammy was exhumed.
Yeah.
And to have Chad Daybell telling him in the blessing that Alex would know when it was his time to go.
Exactly. To go.
Because he'd completed his mission. He'd done his work. This was just one of his mortal probations, and he would know when it was time to go. So I really think that I think probably that he did take his own life. That's, I think, the most plausible explanation.
That's what I think as well.
That I think, yeah.
And all along, yeah. I think
I agree with you both. I think I don't think Zulema had anything to do with it. I think she may have known about it, but I think he took his own life. Whatever he took, I think is what they gave Tammy, whatever that is. I don't know what it would be, but it caused the same reaction, you know, the edema that happened. Well, Megan, again, everybody in chat, welcome here. Megan has, and I'm so grateful you did this. You merged our chats. I think that's so cool. I had no idea that was even a possibility. I'm such a dork. I
was getting all confused.
So. You know, I'm sorry I didn't forewarn you. I figured this out one night when I was on Surviving the Survivor. When I got to the StreamYard room, to the studio, there's this little thing on the side up there that says cast this to your own channel or something.
Right.
So I clicked on it and I was like, oh, there's my channel icon. And I was like, I wonder what would happen if I clicked it. So I clicked it and I didn't really realize that I had done that until after the show was over, and I had the show on my channel and it had views on my channel. I was like, oh, that's cool.
That is so cool. I love it. I'm glad you taught us that.
Well, you can do it anytime you're here.
Yeah, and Megan, we'll have you back anytime that you want. We're going to put the link to your book and to your YouTube channel and to all your links in our description. I'll put it on websleuths.com as well. That's the best true crime discussion forum in the universe, everybody. So, Megan Connor, thank you so much. And again, thank you for the work that you're doing and recognizing trauma and letting people know that it's okay to heal. It's okay to talk about it. Doesn't make you a weak person if you admit something is hurting you or has hurt you. If we could all do that, this world would be a much better place.
Yeah.
So
I think the number one message that I always want to share is that all of us know people like Lori who are manipulative, who have one face in public and another face in private. And all of us have wounds that need healing. And so if we want to have healthier relationships, whether it's in our families, our personal lives, our workplaces, then we need to examine our own shortcomings and our own emotional wounds, and we need to heal those wounds. There's a saying that if you don't, what is it? If you don't heal what hurt you, you will bleed on people who didn't cut you.
Oh, that's a great saying, and that is so true. Oh my gosh. Megan Connor, thank you so much. We are very lucky. and grateful for you tonight. And we'll be in touch real soon.
Thanks
Yes,
for having
and
me.
our love to your puppy. We're
Thank you.
sending our love to him, and keep us posted, okay?
Thank you so much. I will. I'll let you know.
Take care, my dear. We'll see you.
Bye-bye.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Everybody, just in case you didn't know, Megan's dog ate some wild mushrooms that made it sick, very sick. And so we're just, please keep your fingers crossed and hope and pray for this sweet little puppy. The vet's just saying give the dog pain pills, just needs to get out of its system, and hope the dog recovers. So again, don't forget the name of her book, and we'll put all of this in the description, okay? The name of the book is I Walked Through Fire to Get Here, and her YouTube channel is Third Verse, and we'll put that, all of these links in the description as well. I can't thank her enough for coming on here tonight. I could talk to her for hours and hours and hours.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, real quick, everybody, before we get to a little bit more about what happened in court today, we don't take donations here. We don't have, memberships or anything like that. But what we do ask you to do is help family members find the remains of their loved ones. There is an organization called DNAsolves.com. I just put their link in chat. And if you could subscribe to DNAsolves.com and donate something once a month, because they have hundreds of cases that they need to raise money for to do DNA testing. And these DNA tests cost at least $7,500. Sometimes they only have just a part of a body. Sometimes they have the full body. But it takes scientists. It takes genealogists. You wouldn't believe the massive amount of work that goes into trying to find who these remains belong to, trying to find these families. So I've put a link up so you can subscribe to DNAsolves.com. Subscribe, even if it's $1 a month. You could help solve a case and help a loved one go home. Okay, if you could do that for us, if you like this channel, please become a member of DNAsolves.com, subscribe, and help a family, okay? Okay, now I want to talk a little bit more tonight. I was going to play this big thing from Nate Eaton, but Megan was so fascinating that it took our time. But I can tell you a little bit about what happened in court today. Okay, we talked earlier about, this didn't happen in court, but this is from an old interview that Nate Eaton played tonight. And I'll put Nate Eaton's Courtroom Insider link inside the description as well. But it's where Zulema, the night she married Alex, they went back to the hotel and he wanted to give her a massage. And he said, we need to go get like a piece of plastic to put on the bed. And they bought this huge tarp. The way she made it sound, I thought of the tarp that like Dexter would use when he'd kill somebody. And she said he didn't hardly use any oil, certainly not enough to, have a tarp like that on the bed. And then she just heard him talking to himself, just blah, 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 for a while. Finally, she says, who are you talking to? And he's like, nobody. She wonders if she was meant to be killed that night for whatever reason. Lori and Chad didn't need any solid reason to kill anybody, just if they wanted to. Maybe that's why they forced the marriage, not forced, but convinced Alex to marry Zulema. Maybe they wanted her gone for some reason at that moment and then changed their mind. Well, something that was learned in court today that had only been rumored, according to Nate Eaton, and that was Chad Daybell had been telling people, oh yeah, JJ's going to die early. He's going to die young, and he's going to come back as, oh God, what's Lori's son's name?
Colby.
Colby. He's going to come back as Colby's son. Yeah. He was telling people that. I mean, I'm just like, oh my God, this is just, and okay, this guy's going around telling people that this 7-year-old kid's going to die because he's a zombie. If you're a zombie, the only way you can get cleared is to have this, do this clearing ceremony, and then your body has to die to be saved. He's telling people that JJ's going to die young. Why didn't somebody go to the damn police, for God's sakes? Oh God, it just makes me so mad. But anyway, another story that was told, and this was told in Lori's trial too. Zulema was with Lori when she got a phone call, and she's yelling at somebody on the phone that they're an idiot and they can't do anything right. And this goes on for a while. She hangs up and she's going on and on about this guy's a moron. He's just an idiot. Well, she was talking to Alex, and it was the night that Tammy Daybell said somebody with a paint gun shot it at her. Yeah. So obviously they had intended for Tammy Daybell to die that night, and she didn't. Yeah. And nobody said anything. Exactly, Kresha. Nobody said anything. And that's what just makes me, God, it makes me so angry. You know,
And Charles, look at Charles. Charles did everything he freaking could.
Yeah, he did.
Know, and tried to save those kids. And that's what he was worried about. And nobody listened to him. And it's so infuriating.
In Arizona, the cops just totally believed what Lori said. And in Rexburg, nobody went to the police. How would it have been if 2 to 3 people would have gone and said, hey, this is what Chad and Lori are talking about.
Yeah.
You know, come on, you got to do something. Step in and save these kids. You know, they're calling them zombies. And the only way for zombies to survive are to be killed. Nothing. You know what? I hope it eats those people. Because you know what? There was a significant amount of people that Chad had said this to because he was bragging. You know, that he had these powers and he could tell. He told Zulema that she could control the weather, for God's sakes. And she believed him for a while, she said on the stand today, but she doesn't anymore. Now, Zulema was given immunity. But like our good friend Lauren from Hidden True Crime said, she's the most believable because she's got nothing to lose. No matter what she says, she's not going to get in trouble. And by the way, Lauren will be here tomorrow night to talk about the case. She's there in Idaho watching the Chad Daybell trial. So I'm going to put the link up in the description to East Idaho News, Nate Eaton and his Courtroom Insider. It is a great way to catch like the highlights of a 7-hour court day. It is fantastic. So, Kresha, I'm so glad you're here. We love you.
We do.
Give your mom and Larry our love too, okay? We're always thinking of you guys. Speaking of trauma, Kresha, you've certainly been through it, and we're here for you, my dear, whenever you need us. Off the air, on the air, whatever you want, okay? Okay. Well, yeah, that's what I was saying, Jenny Allison. Lori was talking to Alex. Yeah, she was talking on the phone, and Zulema could hear her yelling at somebody and acting mad. She got off the phone, and she said, "What an idiot!" And yeah, so yeah,
that's what you said.
Is that what I said, or did I not say that? I thought that's what I said.
You said it. You're just pissed. So
so
yeah, exactly.
It just gets me so mad. It just gets me so angry.
Yeah, it is one of the most. It's like that Joe Achinkaway case. All these people knew. Everybody but the victim knew that his girlfriend was gonna shoot him up with drugs to kill him. He was supposed to commit suicide that night.
No, wait, whoa. Which one? Which one's that?
I covered the case on the show, Joe Chinkaway. They had this dinner, and all the friends, what it was about is supposedly Joe and his girlfriend were going to commit suicide that night. Joe was.
That's right.
Everybody knew but Joe, and nobody pulled him aside and said, hey, dude, are you sure you want to do this? Nobody called the police, nothing. And then you got all these people around. People are talking about children being zombies, and zombies have to die, and nobody says anything.
Yeah, and Chad Daybell actually says, yes, JJ is going to die young and come back.
Yeah, that's not scary or nothing.
Oh, my God.
I'm sorry. It makes me say bad words.
No, it makes me crazy, too. And yes, retired. Both Melanies, I believe, should be charged. How they didn't get charged, I don't know. Oh, sorry, Jenny Allison. Oh, I thought you were like telling me I was saying it wrong. I'm like, what did I say? Because I don't listen to what I say. It just comes flying out. And I just assume
Jenny, usually she does say stuff wrong. So
all the time. It's nonstop. And usually people in chat are always correcting me. So thank Jenny Allison. It's okay. No worries. So let's see, what else was I going to tell you about that? That's about it. So anyway, like I said, I will put Nate Eaton's link in there. Now, we do have new news tonight in the Sebastian Rogers case. All right. The picture of that young man in North Carolina is not Sebastian Rogers. Is not. I apologize. Do you have the statement, insightful one, that the sheriffs put out? Can you read it? Because Othram text Bug Nugget the First is going to lose his mind unless I get him what he wants here, and he'll be driving everybody crazy.
There's one more new thing as well that I texted you. You check it out while I read the statement.
Okay, thank you. Okay, what is it, Bug? Come on, Authy. Come on, let's go. Let's go, Authy. Let's go.
See. I totally said I could.
Yeah.
And I hope my eyes allow me. Where to go? Let me see.
Oh, let me read this really quick.
Yeah.
Because now Authy's not telling me what he wants. So, okay, this is even better news. The mother of the boy in the picture from North Carolina has now posted a statement. She names her son as the boy in the picture and her as the woman in the pink shirt. She's asking all who have posted this photo to please remove it. Okay? And the sheriff's department has said this absolutely is not Sebastian. All right? That's basically what it says in the statement. So I didn't think it was him. I really didn't. I know Seth thought it was him, and I get it. If I was Seth, I would say it was him.
Because they're hoping it's him. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Nick Barris from Channel 5 News, he was convinced, I think, that it was Sebastian. And it did look like him. It really did. It really did. Yes, back to the Chad Daybell trial. Kresha, you're right. And nobody said anything. And here we are, trial number 2, and none of the insiders seem to know the truth or remember it from a hole in the ground. It's enraging. Oh, boy, you are so right.
Yeah.
I mean, look at how enraged we get. Kresha, I can't imagine. Everybody, Charles Vallow is Kresha's uncle. And I can't imagine the anger, especially Charles, when he tried so hard to get somebody to listen to him. So hard.
That could not have been easy for him to go to the police, say these things about his wife, whom he loved, and scared for the children, and say things that makes a person sound crazy just saying
Exactly. Yeah.
We sound crazy talking about him.
Exactly.
But he did it.
He did it. He did it. And he tried, and he loved Lori, and he tried so hard to save her.
Yeah.
And this is what he got in return.
Oh,
this is what he got. How Alex wasn't charged with murder within days of that, I will never know. Alex stood over Charles, pointed the gun, and shot him. They can tell that trajectory fairly quickly. Okay? So I don't know why. I don't know. I guess they just wanted to believe him. Even though it was an open case forever, even when Alex died, it was still open. They had not closed the Charles Vallow shooting yet. So, oh boy. Okay. Anyway, let's see. Okay, so back to Sebastian real quick. There's another thing too. There is a video that I'm going to play now because hold on here. Because Seth, Sebastian's father, passed the Nancy Grace polygraph. In fact, let me get that here. I thought I had pulled it up, but I think I must have closed it. So hang on. Where did it go? Here we go. I just need to send this to my... Okay, Authy, you're just going to have to chill for a minute because I tried to help you earlier. And you went, nope, I don't want to tell you. Don't want to tell you what I want. Okay, there we go. Oh, that's right. Real quick, let me tell you that story, what happened. Difficult research says, what do y'all think about sleazy as Arizona attorney G. Smith, who Judge Boyce ordered to leave the courtroom yesterday? Now, he is the representative for Zulema Summer, which is Lori's sister, Melanie Pulowski, and in the past was successfully sued by Brian, not Brian, sorry,
Brandon Boudreaux.
Brandon Boudreaux, because he made all these wild accusations against Brandon, who used to be married to Melanie. Yeah, what happened was, who was on the stand? It was one of his clients. It was, oh my gosh.
Was it Melanie yesterday?
No. It was, oh no, it was Ian Pulowski. That's who it was. Ian's the one who's married to Melanie, who on their honeymoon was recording what she was saying to give to the police. And they're still married because he was worried about Melanie's kids. We found out in court yesterday that 2 of Melanie's kids were considered dark. And Melanie even said, I'm so glad Uncle Alex is, and I'm paraphrasing, on the other side now, because then he can take care of, and then she says the nicknames of her 2 children. I think they were going to kill them. And Ian was worried about that, so he went to the police. Anyway, where was I going? So yesterday in court, they had a sidebar, and they removed this attorney, Smith, and what was his name? Garrett Smith, I think. And he was being accused of nodding, like doing this or doing this when Ian Pulowski was testifying. And Ian, when asked by John Pryor, were you taking cues from your lawyer? He absolutely denied it. And Smith gave a statement saying he was never doing anything like that. And I don't believe it for 1 second. Smith is a sleazeball, in my opinion. I think he was absolutely. Now, whether Ian was paying any attention to him or not, I don't know. Ian,
right.
I like Ian, and after all, that's what's important. Who I like, right? No, he on his honeymoon, he was the one worried about the kids and went to the police. He's the only one. He and Charles, that's it. You got to give the guy credit, and he's still married to Melanie, and they have children. Oh my God. Okay, I need a blood pressure pill.
Yeah, you need to calm down.
Oh my God. Okay, so here's the deal. Let me grab it here. Oh God. Honest to God, here it is. Okay, so this is Nancy Grace, and remember Seth Rogers, Sebastian's dad, was going to take a polygraph provided by Nancy Grace, and I'm going to play this for you right now so you can see what happens. So hang on here. Let me get this. Yes, Athi, I'll get. Oh, that is just so lovely. That big, disgusting piece of rawhide. Go get it. So hold on. Now I need to take a blood pressure medicine pill thing, or a shot of tequila, one or the other. Okay, here we go. Did Sebastian Rogers' father, Seth Rogers, pass his polygraph? Here we go. Nancy Grace.
Put Sebastian's father, Seth, on the hot seat on national TV and asked him, would he be willing to take a polygraph? He said yes. He did take a polygraph. Straight back out to Seth Rogers. Joining us is Sebastian's father. And now joining us is a renowned polygrapher, Kendall Schule, former head of the entire FBI polygraph program in DC, former special agent with the FBI in DC. He is at Kendall Investigations. Also joining us, Tony Mathis, who is helping Seth Rogers as he walks this very, very rocky path. First of all, let me just get this out of the way. This is a yes, no, Kendall Schule. Did Seth Rogers pass his polygraph?
Yes, he did.
Okay, Seth Rogers, tell me about going and taking the polygraph. We want to hear every single word because I've got a stack of nasty online posts about you failing, about you not going, blah, blah, blah. A lot of trolls chiming in. Let's get to the truth of that polygraph. Seth, what happened?
I showed up early for the polygraph. Mr. Kendall contacted me and told me that he'd be there well before the time that we had stated. So I showed up and I sat in the chair and let him attach those things to me and took the polygraph.
Have you ever had a polygraph before?
No, ma'am.
And what kind of questions did the polygrapher Kendall Schewel ask you?
If I had ever wanted to harm anybody, if I ever wanted to hurt my son, if I had ever hurt my son, if I'd ever had anything to do with his disappearance.
Everybody, we're watching Nancy Grace's Crime Stories, a piece from Crime Stories. I would highly recommend you check it out. And this is Seth Rogers talking about the polygraph that he took, provided by Nancy Grace. Seth is Sebastian Rogers' father. Let's continue.
Question. You said they hooked you up. What do you mean by that, Seth Rogers?
They put things on my hands. They wrapped cords around me. They had a blood pressure cuff on me to measure my blood pressure, measure my heart rate, my breathing rate, things like that.
How long did it take?
It took a minute.
It took 60 seconds. Could you be precise or more precise? How long do you think it took?
We were there for 3 hours, 4 hours.
That's about right. It's not easy. Okay, sit tight, Seth. And again, thank you for being with us. Out to Kendall Schewel, as I told you, former head of the entire FBI polygraph program in DC. Kendall, thank you. When we put out the word that Seth Rogers would take a polygraph, we contacted you because of your reputation. You quickly agreed, and I thank you for that. Again, this was not free. He was paid to do the polygraph. He owes nothing to anybody, and therefore was not swayed one way or the other. He had never met Seth Rogers before in his life. Mr. Schewel, I've looked very carefully at your polygraph report right here. Number one, you start off by saying it was conducted using a comparison question format that meets U.S. government standards. What is a comparison question format? What is that?
It's a format that's well accepted by the polygraph community, particularly the American Polygraph Association. There are certain formats that we can use that are more acceptable, that we know are more reliable. And this was one of those, certainly a test format that I would want to use to make sure we're doing everything right to get the correct results. And this is again a format of polygraph that is widely accepted as a standard in the FBI world and in the polygraph world in general.
We all remember.
Okay, so there you go. He passed. And I don't think that's a surprise to anybody that Seth Rogers passed. So I'm glad I got that out of the way. I don't know what's going on with Chris Proudfoot. I've heard he's gone on other YouTube channels. I don't know of them. I don't know what he's saying. But we'd like to invite the spokesperson for Seth Rogers and Seth Rogers on our live stream. And hopefully they'll be coming on soon. So we'll see what happens. We shall see. Real quick, should we talk about the statements released by the private investigators, Insightful One?
Sure.
Okay. Well, Heather, the private investigator that was working for Seth, she has quit. I apologize. I don't have her statement in front of me, but she just basically said it was time to move on. Our friend Chloe is still working with Seth. She is not associated at all with the spokesperson. And what is the spokesperson's name?
Tony Mathis.
Tony Mathis. She is not associated with Tony Mathis whatsoever. She is working pro bono for Seth, and she is working very, very hard. And she doesn't like to tell everybody what she's doing, but she has told us, and let me assure everybody, she is physically and mentally working as much as she possibly can on trying to find Sebastian. She's an amazing, incredibly strong woman who is dedicated to helping Seth and Sebastian's family bring him home. So let's just, she is not associated with Mr. Mathis. But she is working pro bono for Seth Rogers. I think I've got that right. I hope so.
That or the other involved, Nina Glass.
Nina Glass. Oh, the
SARS.
The SARS person. Yeah, she is not associated with Nina Glass either. So she's just working for Seth pro bono. And we love her for it. And she is working very, very hard.
Yes, she is.
Okay. Real quick, again, everybody, if you could please, we do not take donations here. We don't, but we do ask that you subscribe to this wonderful organization called DNAsolves.com. And even if you donate $1 a month, it will go towards helping DNA testing to completion to help find the families of the unidentified. And there are hundreds of unidentified cases on DNAsolves.com, probably thousands when you get right down to it. But if you could join on a monthly subscription, I'm going to put the link right now and I'll put it in the description. If you could just join, like I said, for $1 a month, if everybody could do that, and then they take the funds where they're needed the most and put them on a case. Minimum for these DNA tests, $7,500. Okay. Again, that's DNAsolves.com/subscribe. I've put the link in the chat and I'll put it in the description as well. I want to thank our wonderful guest, Megan Connor. Thank you so much. And everybody that came over to her chat, welcome. And please, everybody, go subscribe. We'll put Megan's YouTube channel up. Go hit that subscribe button. Okay. It's called Third Verse. And you heard Megan tonight. Wow. What a healer. She is truly a healing, loving human being. And I want to thank our incredible mods, Moonlight View, Four Sons Mon, Huda, all the way from Great Britain, and Alicia Gallegos. So thank you, ladies. Thank you, Ping the Router. We could never have been started without Ping, who will be going on live here shortly. And of course, you, Insightful One. Thank you for all you do, my darling.
Oh, thank you.
Any final words, my dear?
This trial is a long one. That's what I got to say.
It is, and it's going to make your head explode. And tomorrow it continues with the medical examiner from Idaho. Very graphic toward the end of the court today, and I'm sure it will continue tomorrow. Very emotional. And don't forget, tomorrow night, Lauren Matthias from Hidden True Crime, who is there in the courthouse, right there. She sees it all. She'll be our guest tomorrow night, 10:30 Eastern on Web Sleuths YouTube Live. Thank you, Holly Fabrini. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. See you guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.